Hey everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. We are in a brand new meta. Eevee Grove is upon us and the EVs are groving. In this video, I am going to show you all of the best decks that have been found so far for ranked, for tournaments. It's been a really exciting time, and unsurprisingly, Sylveon has been an absolute menace with a lot of these, so let's get into the best decks that you can take into ranked right now. It's not only going to be the EVs, by the way. There's still some really good decks from Celestial Guardians, Extra Dimensional Crisis. Water decks are nowhere to be found. Fun times. Let's start with Sylveon EX, and specifically one of the absolute best decks in the game, maybe the best deck right now. There are some good counters to it, but wow. Sylveon, Greninja, Giratina. I mean, I was playing this on stream the other day. I couldn't believe how good it was doing. It just won that big Ursi Day tournament this weekend. The version you are taking a look at is the tournament winner here. So this has Froakie Ninja, couple of Eevees, Sylveon, Giratina. You're running dual energy with this deck, so you're able to attack with Giratina, with Sylveon, or Greninja, depending on how things are moving throughout the match. It has a great counter into Oricorio, because Greninja can take it down in one combo between Water Shuriken and Mist Slash. It also just does really solid damage with that. You run a couple Cyruses, red card, rare candy, comms, and a cape for this. Ideally, you get Giratina early. That way you can start powering it, but you can also attack very quickly with Sylveon EX and Greninja, depending on how the match is going. So much flexibility, and with Sylveon able to mill through almost your entire deck in like 2 turns. This deck is turbo fast, really strong, and gives you tons of opportunities to outplay your opponents. The next deck I want to talk about, also a Sylveon deck, is Sylveon Magnezone. This was played by a player named Hydra CMS in the recent tournament. I haven't had a ton of experience with it, but I have run into it a couple times, and it's tough because Magnezone does a lot of damage, Sylveon gets online very quickly, and considering those are the only 2 lines you have in your deck, you're able to add a ton of different trainers and supports that will help you out. So this deck has Professor, Sabrina, Cyrus, Guzma, Mars, a comms, a giant cape, and a couple of Pokeballs. Again, Sylveon lets you get everything online. You can attack with Sylveon, it's definitely an option for you, but you can also run this deck without Psychic Energy and just power up with Lightning. However, because Magneton is able to generate its own energy, you can definitely run this as a dual energy or even single Psychic Energy deck. This is a deck that I don't think is as strong as the other Sylveons, but there's really some cool stuff going on with it. This is Sylveon EX with base Sylveon also. The more evolutions you have on your bench, the more damage this does. You can do 130 damage with this non-EX Sylveon, which is really, really strong. I do think there are other faster, stronger decks for Sylveon right now, but this is a cool one that I wanted to highlight in this video also. Now we're going to move on a little bit from Sylveon, even though I do think there are some other good Sylveon combinations that you'll find. I want to transition this into some fire decks. However, a fire deck that has Sylveon in it right now, Sylveon EX, that is crushing it, is Charizard Sylveon EX. The version we're looking at here is from Pepin MX. We were also playing it on stream the other day, and it was very, very close to this. Might have been almost this exact same thing. Here are the cool things about this deck. It's got Charmander into Stoke Charizard with the rare candy. You only need 1 energy on Char, so you're not stressed about energy at all. You have 2 Sylveon EXs and 1 base genetic Apex Flareon. This card is actually super good for this deck, and here are a few reasons why. 1, it can deal with Oricorio, so you don't need to worry about that at all. It one-shots Oricorio. 2, everything in your deck requires essentially no energy. Sylveon EX is not getting powered in this deck. It is only a fire energy deck, and Charizard needs a single fire energy to be able to use Stoke. Because of that, you actually have the opportunity to power this Flareon relatively easily. It KOs Silvally in a single hit, and it KOs Oricorio super easily. So this is a nice counter for certain decks you run into, and then otherwise you've got Charizard with Lily, with Cape, with Rare Candy, Mars, Sabrina, Pokeballs, and Professors. Really strong, and actually very powerful into the Greninja Sylveon deck as well, which is very cool, right? It's cool to have a counter to something that is very, very strong. The nice thing about this Charizard deck is Steam Artillery KOs everything in that deck in a single hit, as long as they're not running Cape. Next, let's talk about Flareon Turtonator. There was a player that did super well with this in the Ursi tournament. It was Abzange. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. I'm sorry about that. But Abzange did very well with this. We had a version of this on our channel. We were trying Torkoal, Turtonator. This version, really powerful. If you can get Kiawe onto your Turtonator early, you're able to use that to deal serious damage to your opponents, have a super annoying wall that your opponents have to get through. This deck is running Rocky Helm as well, which I think is a really, really good call. And the red in combination with Eevee Bag on Flareons means you are able to deal not only 150 to an EX Pokemon, but actually 170 with 2 Eevee Bags. So there are situations where you can KO an insane amount of the roster with Flareon EX in some super surprising ways. Next, let's talk about Incineroar. I think there are a few ways to play this, but the most popular and what seems like the most consistent is just Incineroar, all by its lonesome, trying to power up as quickly as it can with a couple of Hows and a few supporters. So, I mean, why need Wise when you have Hows? We'll be right back, everybody. No, we're gonna stay right here. Incineroar, 2 Incineroars, Torracat, 2 Littens, of course, 2 Lilies for this deck. This deck also has Rocky Helmets in it, forcing you to take damage when you are dealing with Incineroar, getting you closer and closer to break points so Incineroar can pick up massive KOs. It, of course, has rare candies, a Comms, 2 red cards, an Iono, and those Rocky Helmets we talked about. A deck that has not left the meta at all is Buzzwole EX. It's definitely not the most dominant deck in the meta right now, but Buzzwole EX is still very, very strong. The Ultra Beasts are here, at least for the moment, to do some serious damage. So you've got Buzzwole, Pheromosa, Kartana, Celesteela is able to move you in and out of the fight, Leaf Cape to give you more survivability. This deck might end up getting tweaked a little bit to sort of deal with the meta better, but 120 damage from Buzzwole is still very, very considerable. You might end up even running red or something like that in this, so you can one-shot a lot of the Eevee threats that you're seeing. But given that this deck has a lot of opportunity to deal that damage with things like Kartana and Pheromosa, you may not need this. Buzzwole is still very, very strong. The next deck I want to talk about is the classic Solgaleo Shiinotic. This is still really, really good. There are some decks that are playing well into it right now, but there's no question that you could climb the ladder very well with this, grind really well. It one-shot Sylveon EX. It's one of the fastest decks in the entire game. I do think you can now swap in leftovers into this deck, and I think a lot of players are deciding to do that. The thing about leftovers with this deck specifically is Solgaleo is one of the only cards that feels like it takes like 1-to-1 like direct help from leftovers, right? You do damage with Soul Breaker, 10 damage to yourself, leftovers immediately brings you back to full HP. So if you're worried about any of those breakpoints, you can try to find an opportunity to slot leftovers into this deck so you have a little more survivability with this Pokemon. However, you could still run other tool cards, and at the same time, you can decide to run none of that and have more trainer supports in your deck. I want to talk about another Ultra Beast here. Let's talk about Guzzlord Nihilego, as well as Guzzlord Nihilego and Naganadel, right? I think these decks are not the absolute best, but still perform decently well in the meta. And I've noticed a lot of the Eevees and things that you're running into are not playing things that directly counter this. There isn't a ton of Pokemon Center Lady. There's not a lot of Arceus that is, stopping poison or anything like that. So I actually think you're going to have a good time with decks like this, whether you're running, again, the Guzzlord Nihilego Celesteela, or you are running something with the Naganadel. So the 2 decks we're taking a look at are 2 versions of this. The deck we're taking a look at is from Hasself, that's running the Naganadel. And the other deck is being run by a player named Jay Dankist, and it looks like the Guzzlord with just Nihilego is actually having a better time in this meta than the full sort of max poison Naganadel build that you're seeing. So I think if you're going to be playing Guzzlord, you probably keep it more basic with the 2 Guzzlords, 2 Nihilego, 2 Celesteela deck. Silvally Rampardos, still in the meta, still extremely powerful. You're going to see it on the ladder a ton. I know we have as we've been climbing. I think this deck still performs very well. Everything is a single point. Every card does ludicrous damage. You could end up running this with Cranidos or without Cranidos. I do think having a Cranidos in here is a pretty solid option. Silvally feels like a meta staple that is not going to be leaving anytime soon. You are able to fill your deck up with all the supporter cards that you would want. You could even run a Penny, and it's like the one deck where you could say, like, it's not crazy to be running a Penny right here, and you will still have great results with Silvally Rampardos. Incredibly strong, It's so tough to deal with, so fast, requires such little energy, just a brutal deck. Another deck that is still strong is Silvally Oricorio. You could play this with or without Zeraora. I was actually even playing it with Jolteon earlier on stream, and it was still really good because the core component, Silvally, is amazing, and Oricorio directly counters only decks that have EX Pokemon. Outside of that, you fill this up with every supporter that you can find in the entire game and a few Pokeballs, and you just dominate your opponents. The second they see Oricorio, they might end up instant conceding. So this deck still very, very strong. Different, obviously, from Rampardos. It's less overall damage, but the 1 in maybe 5-6 times you run into a deck that simply can't fight Oricorio, you get a free win, which is amazing. Next, I want to talk about the sweetest deck in the game, Sweets Relay. I showed a couple of these on the channel the other day. I don't think this is the most meta thing, but I do think you would be able to climb up ranked decently well with this deck. It does very good if you're going turn 2, not as good if you're going turn 1, but you can have some super fun games outplaying your opponents in some really exciting ways. And then, of course, when you get to have Alchemy attack for 240, 300, whatever damage, you know, like you've got it set up to like 320 and you KO anything in the game. It is a very, very satisfying deck. In fact, the rest of this video, I think I'm going to talk about a few decks that are maybe not the most meta, but are super satisfying. Oh, before that, actually, a super meta deck. Flareon EX and Leafeon EX. I don't even understand where this is coming from. This deck works. It looks like it doesn't work. I get it. It looks like it doesn't work. It does work so well. It's so good. We did so well in ranked with it. It's so frustrating to deal with. Leafeon powers up the base Leafeon or Leafeon EX, while at the same time you have Flareon EX be the card that you are looking to power and sweep through your opponents with. This deck is it feels like one of the most complex to pilot in the entire game right now, but the rewards are unbelievable. It's such a fun deck to play. I absolutely love it. Next, let's talk about Dragonite EX. I think your money is going to be well spent if you're playing Dragonite EX and base Dragonite. I think having the option to go between them and choosing which one actually works better in the moment is the way to go. Instead of playing just Dragonite EX and trying to rely on sort of the cheesy fossil tech, I actually don't think that tech is strong enough most of the time in ladder. However, if you are able to decide which Dragonite you bring in based on the situation, more oftentimes I think bringing in base Dragonite, non-EX Dragonite to do Draco Meteor multiple times, you're going to have a good run with it. It's not the best deck in the meta, but it's definitely got its moments. Next, I want to talk about Primarina EX. I think this card is not fully it. I've tried a lot of different decks with it on stream, and I just don't think it's one of the best decks in the game right now. But I do think you could climb decently well with Primarina. You get a few fortunate starts. To me, there are two decks that worked well. There is Crabominable Primarina and there is Pyukumuku Primarina. And I don't think anything else is that good. Only Primarina feels like a little too... it's just like bad kind of Incineroar, it feels like at that point. Pyukumuku actually helps you set up Primarina a little bit better and punish your opponents for fighting. And then Crabominable will get you free wins. Like Crabominable, you'll run into Incineroar decks. You'll be a turn 1-3. You go Crab into the active spot. You KO Litten in one hit and you move on from the game. Like I actually found Crabominable Primarina to do decently well. This is not the most meta deck, but I wanted to highlight a new EX card coming to the game. Next, I want to talk about Darkrai Giratina. Ugh, stinks in here now. Darkrai Giratina is still a deck. A lot of players are now choosing to run one copy of Nihilego in this deck, and then you fill it up with an insane amount of supporter cards. The version we're looking at right here was in the recent Ursa Day tournament from Allison. I'll have to try and play it. I do think Darktina offers a lot of interesting play patterns, so I understand why players stick to it, and I do understand that some players don't care about how they smell and don't care about having friends or family that want to be around them, so they play things like Darkrai Giratina. But jokes aside, Darkrai Giratina still very much meta, and it looks to be actually a little stronger into a lot of the Eevees in this set. So Darkrai Giratina still doing its thing. There are for sure more decks out there. There are more Magnezone decks that I've seen. There are just a lot of different looks in this meta, and I think there's no way that we have fully cracked the code for all of the best stuff, right? But I do think a lot of the strong stuff with Sylveon is, I mean, really tough to deal with. That Sylveon Greninja deck is insanely powerful. Let me know what you have been playing in the comments and what you have been enjoying. Of course, new cool decks every day on the channel, and once we get through a lot of the meta stuff, we'll also be playing a lot of super fun stuff that works well too. Love you guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing with a friend. If you're a member on the channel, thank you so much for your support. I'll see y'all next time. We did it.